is too much. How many scars will it take? How many battles can I survive, yeah, before I embrace? Taking you take a little more. Now my own heart doesn't feel anymore. Searching, I'm searching, I long for something to cure my withered heart. My withered heart. My withered heart. Help me, I need a lifeline. The soul wears my pulse down.
Hey everybody! I started jamming out while listening to this song. I absolutely love this song. Anyways, we have a different chapter going on today. And we are in the middle of winter. Brr! And I'll show you guys. So this is the scene I've created so far. With all the characters. Well, most of the characters that will be in here. We have Ben, we have Scarlet, we have Trevor, we have Mavis, Lazari, Slender, Jeff, and Jack. Now, so Mavis and Trevor are barely in this chapter, but I wanted to include them. What I have going on between Lazari, Jeff, and Jack are actually a part of something that happened in the series I got them from. Let's just say Lazari throws a gigantic snowball at them. And it wasn't Jack that would been thrown at, it was Ben, but I had to switch it out since Ben is doing a different part in the story. Anyways, on to chapter 5. Scarlet had canceled the party and told everyone an incident had happened and she wasn't able to be there on time. It was the start of Christmas break. The ground was covered in 4 feet layers of snow. The treehouse was decorated and underneath presents were found on Christmas Day. Scarlet mostly spent her time outside, sitting in the snow, staring off in the direction where Dennis and Rake are. She would be outside for hours, wishing she could see her uncle. 1 month before Scarlet was born, Dennis was walking down an empty street. No car, no person in sight. As he was walking past an alley, he was dragged by someone who covered his mouth. Dennis yelled. There was a few guys in masks, unable to recognize but looked to be teenagers. Grab everything he has to make us money, boys, the man holding Dennis said. The boys nodded and grabbed everything on him, even his shoes. Dennis had kicked one of them in the genitals. Ow! Why you? The teenager said in anger. Dennis laughed and snapped his finger. The teenagers turned into mice. Then Dennis dusted his shoulders. Now that's why you don't mess with people who use magic, Dennis said as he grabbed the mice and threw them across the alleyway. A man started to ask Dennis a question. You are quite strong, aren't you? The man said. Dennis looked around. Who goes there? Dennis asked. Oh, don't be afraid, Dennis. I just want to ask you a question, the man said. The man stepped out of the shadows. Dennis starts picking up his stuff. All right, who are you and what do you want? Dennis asked. The man laughed. My name's Zalgo, and I was wondering if you wanted to join me and get revenge on some people, Zalgo asked. Dennis looked at him and tilted his head. Why do I have that made you want me on your team? What do I have that made you want me on your team? Dennis asked. Zalgo smiled at him. You have power, and with that power can help me destroy my enemies. Zalgo says. Dennis looks at him and laughs. What's the catch? Dennis asks. Zalgo looked at him and placed his hands on Dennis's shoulder. Alright, the only catch I have for you is you will be a winner forever. But the moment that you tell somebody who isn't an ally who you really are, you will have no memories of that. You won't remember who you told, and you won't always feel the rage against the enemy. Oh, you will always feel the rage against the enemy, Zalgo said. Dennis looked at the ground and thought for a moment. I'll do it, but under one condition, Dennis said as he took Zalgo's hand off his shoulder. Zalgo looks at him and tilts his head. Well, what would you like? I can almost create anything, Zalgo says, placing both of his hands on Dennis's shoulders. Dennis took a minute and smiled. I want a spell to take over a special person, to give me at least more allies to fight with. Dennis said. Zalgo looked at him and laughed. Like I said, I can almost create anything. Sadly, I cannot create a spell, but I can create a potion to help you out. Zalgo, while smiling, said. Dennis looked at Zalgo and kept a smile. Then we have a deal, Dennis said, as he held out his hand to Zalgo. Wonderful, Zalgo said as he shook Dennis's hand violently. Zalgo then took a step back and Dennis started to float in the air. He started to scream in pain. Dennis had been transformed into a vampire. It's hard to fight the living if your body starts to shut down. Dennis's mouth was drooling blood from things that had forcibly been pushed out. Zalgo placed a push in Dennis' knees in front of him. Welcome to the family, Dennis, Zalgo said as he remembered to fade away. As he started to fade away. Dennis grabbed the potion and hid it in his coat. I'll get my revenge, brother, Dennis said as he passed out from the aches and sores. Balin made hot chocolate for Scarlet, who had been sitting in the snow for hours now. She bundled herself up and went outside. Scarlet, sweetie, you should really come inside, Balin was saying, then paused. There had been a kitten cuddling up with Scarlet, alive and wrapped within Scarlet's scarf. Mom, how come you never told me about that Dennis was my uncle? Scarlet asked. Balin looked at her and sighed. Here's the thing. I never knew you had an uncle. Your aunt had passed away from cancer before Herebrand went to high school, and your father had never had any siblings, Balin said. Scarlet looked at Balin. I don't understand then. Why was Dad in his memory saying brothers fight and argue all of that? Scarlet said as she booped the kitten's nose. Balin sat with Scarlet and placed her hand on Scarlet's shoulder. I'm not sure, although I do remember Dennis talking about a power he had to get someone to forget memory of someone, but I don't remember what else he said. Balin said. Scarlet looked straight ahead of her. Mom, is it okay that I go through your memory real quick? Scarlet asked with a smile. Balin looked at her and smirked. You can look at my memories as soon as you get that cold body of yours in the warm treehouse, Balin said, smiling. Scarlet looked at the snow and got up. All right, can we please keep the kitten? Scarlet asked with puppy eyes. Balin got up as well and laughed. Fine, but you have to clean her little box, Balin said. Scarlet jumped in excitement and ran to the ladder into the treehouse and climbed up. Balin laughed and climbed up. Scarlet had placed the kitten in her room with some tuna fish. Scarlet and Balin sat on the couch. Hurry, I'm ready, Balin said. Scarlet holds Balin's hand and looks through her memory Balin will talk about. Scarlet saw Rake, Dennis, and Zach, and some people Scarlet didn't know. Since Balin couldn't remember the rest of what he said, the memory was mostly mute. Scarlet had noticed someone in the trees watching them. Slendy, Scarlet yelled. Balin's head was throbbing. What about Slendy? Balin asked while she placed her hand on her head. Scarlet looks at Balin. Slendy was there watching Dennis and his team. Maybe he knows what he said about the memory spell, Scarlet said. Balin looked at her with mixed emotion. What? Scarlet, I'm not sure. Balin was interrupted. Well, why don't we go on a trip then? Herobrine said. Herobrine and Brennan were standing by the couch. We will be safe. You don't have to worry, Ben said to Balin. Balin sighed. All right, just be careful. You never know who or what you might run into, Balin said with a smile. Scarlet, Ben, and Herobrine get themselves dressed warm for walking to Slenderman's house. Scarlet brings a bag full of medical supplies in the middle of the woods. She placed one of Dennis's potions in her bag that he gave Ben. Snow constantly falling, and Scarlet is trying to catch every snowflake she sees. It's been a long time since I've seen the place, Ben said. Herobrine looked around. I've never seen this part of the woods before. Dennis had a group that stayed by the school at all times. I've never seen so much nature, Herobrine said in shock. Ben looked at one of the trees and saw a piece of paper. We're almost there, Ben said. Scarlet started to twiddle her thumbs and shake. Herobrine placed his arm around Scarlet. Don't worry, Scar. We will be there soon to warm up, Herobrine said to comfort Scarlet. It's not that. Something doesn't seem right. I can sense a smell of blood, Scarlet said as she looked around. Ben, stop. We're here, Ben said. Slendy was outside along with Jeff, Hoodie, and Masky. They seemed to have been looking for something. Guys, what are you doing? Ben asked as we started to walk over. Slenderman turned his head and waved. Haven't seen you three in a while. We, just lost something and we're trying to find it, Slendy said. Scarlet looks around and sees blood in the snow. Scarlet crosses her arms and looks at Slendy. All right, Slendy, what's really going on? There's blood in the snow and only the living can bleed, Scarlet said with an annoyed look. Slendy sighed. Oh my goodness, Lazori is missing and Jack is most likely dying, Slendy said with a sad tone in his voice. Scarlet looks at Ben and runs instantly in Slenderman's home. There she goes, Herobrine said. Ben looks at Herobrine and then back at Slendy. Why would he be dying? What happened? Ben and Herobrine asked. Slendy looked at them and sighed again. I'll tell you everything, Slendy said. Scarlet went running through Slendy's house all the way to Jack's room. Scarlet opens Jack's door and sees Jack on the ground in front of his window, covered in black veins. Oh my God, Jack, Scarlet said as she ran towards Jack. Scarlet attempts to wake Jack up. Jack, wake up, Scarlet said as she started to shake him. A few moments after shaking him, before Scarlet gave up, Jack started coughing. He was in pain. Scarlet? Jack said. Scarlet helped Jack sit up. You scared the hell out of me. I really thought you were gone, Scarlet said, sitting Jack up at the wall. Scarlet sighs. What caused this? Scarlet said in a calm voice as she took her bag off. Jack sighed. When Lazari first started living with us, she bit me. She said she didn't mean to, so I thought it would be fine, Jack said softly. Scarlet pulls needles out of her bag filled with the remaining potion that was used on Kaylee. Jack looks at the needles curiously. What's in that? Jack asked as he coughed. Scarlet looks at him and sighs. Don't worry about it. Sorry about that, guys. Scarlet said as she inserts the needle, allowing the potion to flow in his blood. Jack stopped coughing and started to rest. Scarlet places her hand on Jack's shoulder. Rest now. For now. I'll be back to check on you, Scarlet said. Jack had fallen asleep because of the potion. Scarlet calmly walks out of Jack's room, closing his door quietly. She walked outside as Ben and Herobrine looked at her, worried about Jack. Scarlet, Ben said. Slendy turned around and looked at Scarlet. He sat up straight. Is Jack going to be okay? Slendy asked. Scarlet placed her hands on her coat and put her hands in the coat pocket and smiled. Scarlet nodded to Slendy. Slendy sighs in relief. Thank goodness, Slendy said. Scarlet walked over to Ben and Herobrine. He should be fine for now. He fell asleep after I gave him the potion, Scarlet said. Ben looked at her and laughed. Maybe that potion from Dennis had some sleepy effect, Ben said. Slendy laughed at Ben's joke and sighed. I need to get back to finding Lazari. That blood you saw was our first clue, Slendy said as he got up. Scarlet looks at Slendy. Wait, there's something we need to ask you, Scarlet said. Slendy looked at Scarlet and sighed again. Is it possible you can ask me after we find Lazari? She could be cold out here, or even hurt, Slendy said, worried for Lazari's condition. Scarlet looks at Ben and Herobrine again. Alright, let's find Lazari. The sooner we find her, the faster we can ask the question, Herobrine said as he started to look at Scarlet. Scar, stay with Jack and help him with whatever he needs. Ben and I will go in the woods and see if is a trail, Herobrine said. Scarlet looks at them both worried. She hugs them both. Don't die out there, okay? Scarlet said. Scarlet stops hugging Ben and Herobrine and runs back inside. Ben looks at Herobrine. What are we waiting for? We have to save Lazari, Slendy says. Hold on, guys. Let me just take a sip of my drink real quick. I am dying right here. Okay. Ben and Herobrine start to follow the footprints in the snow and faded within the winter forest. Scarlet sighed. Scarlet looked around. Wow. Started to look around the house. Wow. I never really seen the inside of Slendy's house. I just ran through it just to get to Ben's room. Scarlet walks around the house. Scarlet comes across Lulu's room and hears her talking. Scarlet knocks on her door. Lulu, are you okay? Scarlet asked. Scarlet walks in and sees her crying. Lulu, what's wrong? Scarlet asked Lulu. Lulu wipes away her tears and looks at Scarlet. They took Lazari, Lulu said. Scarlet looked at her confused. What do you mean? Who took Lazari? Scarlet asked. Lulu confused. Lulu stops crying. I used to be one of the bad guys. I used to work for Zalgo. They came and told me they wanted Lazari. Lulu said as she started to cry again. Scarlet, in shock, looked at Lulu. Don't worry, Lulu. We will find her, Scarlet says. Scarlet hugs Lulu and leaves the room. She stops at Jack's room and knocks. Jack, you feeling better, buddy? Scarlet asked as she opened the door. Scarlet looks at Jack and smiles. What are you doing? You're supposed to be resting. Scarlet said as she laughed. Jack looks at her and crosses his arms. I feel fine though. I want something to do, Jack said in a grumpy voice. Scarlet laughs again and Jack looks away from Scarlet. Are you really acting like a child right now? You know that. You're really acting like a child right now. You know that? Scarlet said. Jack looked at Scarlet and uncrossed his arms. Maybe, Jack said. Scarlet walks into Jack's room and sits in the chair. You hungry? Scarlet asked. Jack looked at Scarlet and nodded. Scarlet smiled. Come on, Grumpy, let's get you something to eat. Scarlet gets up and walks towards Candy's kitchen. I have kidneys in the freezer, Jack yelled from his room. Like hell, I'm going to touch a kidney. You need some veggies, Scarlet yelled back. Scarlet starts making a salad for Jack, thinking, maybe I should give him at least one. He was dying after all. Scarlet says to herself. Scarlet puts on 3 pairs of gloves and grabs a kidney out of the freezer. Gross. She starts to de-thaw the kidney and chop it in pieces. She put the pieces in the salad and mixed it up. She grabbed a fork and walked towards Jack's room. All right, Grumpy, here's your kidney salad, Scarlet says as she walks into the room and gives him the salad. Thank you, Jack said as he started to eat both the salad and the kidneys inside. Scarlet looks at Jack. I'm going to go help look for Lazari. Are you okay by yourself? Scarlet asked. Jack looked at her. Of course I'm okay by myself. I'm not a child, Jack said, then started to laugh. Scarlet smiles and walks outside. Okay, Lazari. Let's find you before Zago does. Walking through time in seconds. Seconds turned to minutes. Minutes turned to hours. Balin was in the kitchen cooking a meal. Kaylee, dinner! Balin yelled. Kaylee came running down the treehouse hallway. What's for dinner? Kaylee asked. Balin looked at Kaylee. Cheesy macaroni, Balin said. Kaylee had the greatest look on her face. Yay! Kaylee said. Balin places Kaylee's plate in front of her, and she digs in. Balin sighs. What's wrong? Kaylee asked. Balin looked at Kaylee. I'm just worried. It's been hours and they aren't home yet, Balin said as she looked at the window. Kaylee placed her hand on Balin's shoulder. Don't worry, they'll be fine. For right now, we should eat all of the cheesy macaroni, Kaylee said. Kaylee continued to eat her food. Balin smiled and started to eat too. And that was the end of chapter 5. Let's see how long. This was a short chapter, so I will read another chapter. Chapter 6. It's dark, quiet, and cold. Scarlet had been walking in the snows for 5 hours, freezing. She couldn't think, just walk. I will find you, Scarlet said as she collapsed to the ground. Lazari. Scarlet said it before she closed her eyes. She went unconscious. It wasn't long until someone was nearby. There were footprints getting closer and closer to Scarlet. They paused in front of Scarlet's body. What are you doing all the way out here? They said. They picked up Scarlet and carried her through the woods. Ben, Herobrine, Jeff, Lulu, Jack, and Masky were in Slenderman's living room, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for Scarlet to come back. Herobrine stands up and puts his coat on. Where are you going? We have to wait for... Ben said as Herobrine interrupted. I'm not going to wait to find out what happens to my sister, Herobrine says. I promise to protect her. Slendy and Ben looked at each other, then back at Herobrine. Herobrine looks at the ground and sighs. I lost my sister once, and if I don't go out there and find her, I may lose her forever, Herobrine said. Herobrine walks outside and closes the door behind them. Everyone was silent. Well, what the hell are we waiting for? Jack said as he got up. Slendy looked at Jack shocked. Scarlet saved my life, and I'm just sitting here around. Won't repay the damn favor, Jack said. Jeff looks at Jack and grins. Geez, Jack, watch what you say, Jeff said. Lulu stands up. He has a point. We should be looking for her after all she's done for us today, Lulu said. Lulu and Jack grab their coats and head outside. Jeff looks around. Damn it, come on, Smile. Let's go find them. Let's go find Scarlet, Jeff said as Smile barks. Jeff puts on his coat and a puff coat on Smile. They head outside. The only people left in the house is Masky, Slendy, and Ben. Ben sighs. We need someone to stay here if she comes back, Ben said. Masky stepped forward. Ben, I can stay here and wait for her, Masky said. Ben looked up at Masky. I don't know her well enough to know how I'll find her, but I have faith that you can, Masky said as he sat on the couch. Ben and Slendy looked at each other and headed outside. Slendy looks at Ben. No coat? Slendy asked. Ben looked at Slendy and laughed. Scarlet might need it when she comes back. Might as well leave it here, Ben said. Jeff and Smile were still outside of the woods. Venice Lady teamed up with Jeff and Smile and went to look for Scarlet. Whew, lots of reading today. Scarlet woke up. She was in a home unfamiliar with. Scarlet's vision was blurry. "Thank goodness you're okay. I was worried you weren't going to wake up," they said. Scarlet rubs her eyes and looks up. "Mary?" Scarlet asked. Mary was carrying a tray with 2 cups filled with hot chocolate. Mary sits down next to the bed. "How did I get here?" Scarlet asked. Mary smiled. "I was traveling through the woods and I saw you laying in the snow. I figured that you've been walking for a while and used up all your energy," Mary said. Mary gives Scarlet a cup of hot chocolate and looks at the ground. "We have to stay quiet. My father cannot know you're here," Mary said. Scarlet looks at her and tilts her head. Mary looks back at Scarlet and smiles. "Anyways, why were you in the woods anyways?" Mary asked. Scarlet looked down at the hot chocolate and started to twiddle her fingers around the mug. "You see, someone well known in my home had gone missing, and there was a trail of blood in the snow, so everyone was looking for her right now. I had gotten lost trying to find her, and I guess I passed out," Scarlet said. Mary looked at her a bit shocked. "Did she have brown hair and looked a bit like a teenager?" Mary asked nervously. Scarlet looks at Mary. "Yeah, somewhat. Maybe a bit of red." Mary looks to her side. "You saw her?" Scarlet asked. Mary looked at her and nodded. Scarlet's eyes were wide open. "I saw some people carrying a girl in the woods. Her hair was bloody. I didn't get a look at the people carrying her, but they did look." Mary paused to hear a creak at the door. "Mary, I'm home," they said aloud. Mary looked at Scarlet. "Stay quiet and hide," Mary whispered. Mary started to walk towards the door. "How did work go?" Mary yelled from her room. Mary looked back at Scarlet and placed a finger over her mouth. Mary left the room and went downstairs as Scarlet went to hide in Mary's closet. It was quite successful, actually. Guess who got a promotion?" they said. The person who had entered the house was Mike, Mary's kidnapper that she now calls Dad or Mike. "Awesome. Does that mean you brought me a new plushie?" Mary asked as she leaned against the wall. Mike looks at Mary, opening his briefcase. "Aw, you ruined your own surprise," Mike said as he pulled out a Springtrap plushie. Mary smiles. She walks up to Mike and takes the Springtrap plushie. "Thanks, Dad," Mary said. Scarlet was still hiding in the closet. She could hear every word they're talking about, wondering. Mary's dad seems so nice. Why doesn't she want him to know I'm here? Scarlet said in her head. Scarlet put her hot cocoa down and looked through the closet door blinds. "I see that you went outside. Did you have fun?" Mike asked. Mary nods. Mike smiles and looks at his briefcase. "Although I didn't notice not just one, but 2 pairs of shoes covered in snow," Mike said as he looked back at Mary. Mary looks at the floor where she leaves their shoes. "Oh, those? A friend of mine wanted me to decorate her shoes since they were so plain, and when I was trying to unlock the door, they fell out of my hands and got into the snow," Mary said, smiling. "How nice of you. Do you need me to buy you any supplies? Glue sticks, glitter, Sharpies, anything?" Mike asked. Mary nodded. "I actually need you to get me some of those colored glue sticks, if it's not any trouble to get. And maybe some black and red glitter?" Mary says. Mike looks at her and laughs. "Not a problem at all. I'll head out as soon as I get dinner ready," Mike says as he closes his briefcase. Mike walks towards the cabinet and grabs colored spaghetti. Mary smiles. "Thanks, Dad," Mary says as she starts to walk up the stairs. "Oh, and Mary?" Mike says while Mary starts to walk up the stairs. "Yeah?" Mary says. Mike looks at Mary and smiles. "Should probably take those shoes upstairs to dry instead of having them on the wet floor. Can't make shoes flashy if they're wet," Mike says. Mary smiles and grabs the shoes and her Springtrap plush. Mary heads back upstairs to the room and closes the door behind her. "Phew." Mary whispered. Mary looked around the room. Is it safe to come out now? Scarlet whispered. Mary stood up straight. Yeah, Mary said. Scarlet opened the closet door and took a deep breath. How come you didn't want your dad to know I'm here? Scarlet whispered quietly. Mary looked at Scarlet. She sighed and slid down the door to sitting on the floor. Some things are better to be unknown than said, Mary said. Mary got up and grabbed Scarlet's winter coat, gloves, and scarf. You have to leave before he finds out you're here, Mary said as she opened the windows and threw a rope ladder out of the window. Scarlet puts her shoes on. The snow had started to fall lightly. What? Where am I supposed to go? Scarlet said loudly. Mary looks at her and quickly covers her mouth. Mary, what was that? Mike asked as he started to walk up the stairs and stood in front of Mary's bedroom door. Mary's eyes go big as she places her fingers covering Scarlet's lips. I'm just talking to myself, that's all, Mary yelled. Scarlet and Mary stood silent. Well, okay. Dinner will be ready soon, Mike said from outside the door. Mike walks away from her door and heads back downstairs. Mary helps Scarlet put on her winter clothes. Remember you introduced me to Travis? His house is not that far from here. You'll know it when you see it, Mary whispered. Scarlet nods. She climbed down the ladder into the snow. Mary pulls the ladder back up. Be safe, okay? Mary said. She closes her window shades. Scarlet looks around. There's a road, Scarlet said to herself as she walked towards it. The street lights shined bright. I felt safe. Scarlet! A voice yelled. Scarlet looked around and saw a plain white house with flowers painted on the trim. There stood Travis, Mavis, Sasha, and Herobrine, calling out for me. Scarlet! They were saying again. Scarlet ran towards the house and hugs Herobrine. Where the hell have you been? Ben said from the inside of the house. Everyone crowds around and hugs Scarlet. We were so worried, Mavis said. Thank goodness you're safe, Trevor said. Herobrine hugged Scarlet tighter. I thought I lost you again, Herobrine said. Everyone lets go of Scarlet. Herobrine hugs her for a bit longer, then stops. What happened? Where did you go? Herobrine asked. Scarlet looks at Trevor, Ben, then Herobrine. I had gotten lost in the woods, passed out, and then woke up at a friend's home, Scarlet said. Mavis looked at Scarlet. Whose house? Mavis asked. Scarlet looked at Mavis and smiled. Remember the girl I introduced you to before I canceled the party? Mary was walking in the woods during the storm and found me, Scarlet said. Mavis smiled. Sasha looked at everyone. What the hell are you people doing outside? Get inside before you catch a cold, Sasha said. Everyone laughs and walks inside. Scarlet explains everything. Mary, dinner's ready, Mike yells from the kitchen. Mary walks down outside of her room. Coming, Mary said. Mary walks down the stairs and sits at the table to start ready to eat. Mike sits down as well after placing Mary's meal in front of her. You know, I knew someone was in your room, right? Mike said. Mary looked at Mike, frozen. Mike takes a sip of his drink. I'm getting tired of that job, you know? It's getting boring having to, Mike said it before he was interrupting. Please don't get into detail about your work, Mike, Mary said. Mike paused and smiled. Mary and Mike go back to eating. How did you know? Mary asked. Mike looked up at her and smiled. The smell of blood, Mike said. Mike's smile turns to a frown. Mary, confused, continued eating. Mary and Mike finish eating and start to clean up. How is your job making it tiring? Mary asked as she carried dishes to the sink. Mike sighed. Mary, sit down for a second, Mike said. Mary looked at Mike. Mary before she placed the dishes in the sink. Sat down next to Mike. Day by day, it gets more difficult to to find people to, and I'm starting to see all the things I've done. I'm starting to think of how this is affecting you, Mike said. Mary looked at Mike and smiled. You thought about how it would affect me? Mary asked in a sweet voice. Mike looked up at her. Of course I thought about you. It made me think about you even more and more day by day, especially when you call me Dad. I know I'm not your actual dad, but I can do better for my sake and for your future, Mike said as he placed his hand on Mary's shoulder. Tears fall down Mary's face in happiness, and it hugs Mike. You really care. You really do care, Mary said as her tears and happiness constantly fall down her face. Mike smiled and hugged her back. No more creepy dungeons, no more life-taking, and no more lies. Maybe we can work as a team and turn that ugly dungeon into a better bedroom or something, Mike says. Mary stops crying and smiles. The wind starts to get violent again. Dennis and Rake take cover from the storm in a nearby cave. Ah! This is pointless! How are we supposed to win if we don't have the strength to come up with a plan? Dennis said loudly as he walked back and forth, kicking rocks. Rake, sitting on a rock, looks at his hand. Something's not right, Rake says. Dennis starts to kick the rocks harder. Of course something's not right. We're trapped in a damn cave with no food, no warmth, and no goddamn plans. Dennis says as he kicks a boulder, causing him pain. Rake's nails were changing to fingers slowly. His hands no longer could leave scars or gaps in one's skin. Dennis starts to jump on one foot, holding the foot he kicks with the boulders and falls on the ground. Dennis looks over and notices Rake looking at his hands. Something wrong with your hands? Dennis asked. Rake looks up and puts his hands down. No, just thinking, Rake says, hiding his hands. Dennis gets up and brushes the dust off his clothes. Dennis sighs. We need to go get some wood or we're going to freeze to death, Dennis said. Rake crawls towards the cave entrance. I'll be back with more wood, Rake says. Rake looks at Dennis as he tilts his head. Rake's eyes had changed. Yeah, Dennis said. Rake left the cave and sat in the woods for a bit. Who would know what to do about this? Rake said to himself. Rake started to walk around even more and ended up at Scarlett's house, the tree house. A few voices heard in the distance, close to the treehouse. Rake hid behind a tree. This was some crazy night. I'm glad to be home, Scarlett said. Scarlett was walking to the treehouse with Herobrine, Ben, and Slenderman. They passed by the tree Rake was hiding behind. Rake sighed. Scarlett? Rake said out loud. Rake came from hiding behind the trees, looking at the ground. Scarlett turned around to look at Rake. So did Ben, Herobrine, Slenderman. Rake? Scarlett said. Rake looked up a bit, then back at the ground. Scarlett walked towards Rake and kneeled. Ben and Herobrine stood still and calmly behind her. What are you doing out here? Scarlett asked. Then Rake looked at Scarlett, exposing his eye and almost clawless hands. I was with Dennis in a cave within the woods. For some reason, my claws have faded away and they're turning into... Rake said it as he pauses. Scarlett places her hand under Rake's hand. Your eyes are also changing as well. They're brown. Scarlett says. Ben and Herobrine look at each other with curiosity. Slendy, did anything like this ever happen to anyone at the house? Ben asked. Slenderman looked at them and nodded. Smile dog, Slendy said. Scarlett smiles at Rake. It's still snowing pretty bad, and you and Dennis can stay here for the night. It would be wrong to let me leave you both in the cold, Scarlett said. Rake looked up in shock. What? Really? After all we've done with you, you're letting us stay here for the night, Rake says. Scarlett nods. Rake starts to smile for the first time. Rake looks down at the ground. I don't think Dennis will agree to be in here, Rake said. Scarlett stood up. Don't worry about it. I'll have Ben and Herobrine here with them, Scarlett said. As she looked at Ben and Herobrine nod and go into the woods to find him. Come on, let's work as a team and build a decent house for you guys for the night, Scarlett said. Sunday gives a happy expression on his face. They start to collect some wood and grab tools to build a cave. In the cave, step, step, step. Dennis's feet as he walked back and forth. What's taking him so long? Dennis says to himself. Ben and Herobrine arrive at the cave. Dennis looks at the entrance of the cave. Dennis stood still. Who's there? Dennis asked. Ben and Herobrine entered the cave. Relax, it's just Ben and I, Herobrine says. Dennis tilts his head. How did you know I was here? Dennis asked. Ben takes a step towards Dennis. Rake stopped by and he didn't seem well. He asked if Scarlet knew anything about what's happening to him. Ben said. Dennis looked at Ben confused and took a step back. There's nothing wrong with Lake. He's perfectly fine. He was perfectly fine when he left, Dennis said as he crossed his arm. Herobrine looked at Dennis and walked towards Dennis. Herobrine inspects Dennis. The hell are you doing? I'll kill you, Dennis said as he took another step back. Herobrine and Ben look at each other. Ben places his hand on Herobrine's shoulder. I'm going to call Scarlet to see if Rake told him or not, Ben said. Herobrine nodded. Ben walks out of the cave and calls Scarlet on his phone. Herobrine sits on the boulder. Dennis starts tapping his foot on the ground. Why are you here anyways? Dennis asked. Herobrine looked up at him and snuckled. Rake told us that you both were using a cave for shelter from the storm. Scarlet wanted to help you guys out. But that's cold, at least somewhere warm. We were asked to come to get you, Herobrine said with a smile. Dennis looked at him shocked and then quickly changed to a aggressive expression. Why would she offer the enemy a place to stay? Dennis said as he looked at the cave walls. Herobrine became confused. Then we walked back in the cave. Hey, I talked to Scarlet and she said Rake didn't tell him. Am I interrupting something? Ben asked. Herobrine stand and looked at Ben. Remind me of what happened the day Scarlet gave everyone a big fright recently. Herobrine asked Ben. Ben became a bit confused. Well, she was walking home from finding the souls of innocent children and found Dennis and Rake, Ben said. Dennis crossed his arms. I wasn't there for that whole thing, but I do remember Dennis helping Scarlet save Kaylee's life, Ben said. Dennis sighed. Is this some joke? I've never met someone named Kaylee, Dennis asked. Ben and Herobrine look at Dennis. Dennis, don't you remember? You helped Scarlet save a child's life with your own potion, Ben said. Dennis started to get frustrated. Obviously, I would remember saving somebody's life. What kind of sick joke are you two playing? I refuse to go with you. Get out, Dennis yells as he walks more into the cave. Scarlet, Rake, and Sunday finish building a mini cabin for Rake and Dennis to sleep in for the night. Scarlet placing her hands on her side, smiling. I haven't seen you this friendly since we saved Kaylee, Scarlet said to Rake. Rake looks at Scarlet and tilts his head. Who's Kaylee? Rake asked. Scarlet puts her arms down. Remember that girl you found in the woods a while ago? And Dennis helped me save her? Scarlet said. Rake looked in a different direction. You don't remember, do you? Scarlet asked as her arm fell to her side. Dennis shakes his head. You're the only person I've met that's human to live, Rake said. Dennis places his hand on his head. I'll be heading home. Take care, Scarlet. Thank you for helping, Sunday said as he walked within the woods, waving goodbye. It must have been a shock before I left. The shock before I left, Scarlet said quietly. Rake tilted his head. The what? Rake asked. Scarlet looks at Rake. Before I let you and Dennis bring the girl home, you and Dennis had some sort of pain. I don't know how to explain it, but you and Dennis seem to be in a lot of pain, Scarlet said. Rake looked down at the ground and a rustle in the bushes came about. Hey, let go, a voice yelled. Rake and Scarlet look in the woods. It sounds like Dennis, Rake said. Soon enough, Ben and Herobrine come along, dragging Dennis by his leg. Quit your whining already. It's annoying, Dennis said. Rake and Scarlet froze looking at them. They look at each other and burst out laughing. Ben looks at Scarlet and Rake, laughing hysterically. What's so funny? Ben asked. Scarlet looks at Ben, still laughing. We're laughing at how Dennis is acting like a child. Scarlet says. Trying to stop herself from laughing, Rake starts to calm down, then continue to look at the ground. I told you, I don't know what you're talking about. Now let me go, Dennis yells. Herobrine looks at Ben and nods his head. Herobrine and Ben, hold him in the air and let him go. Dennis hits the ground, giving Herobrine and Ben an unpleasant look. Something wrong with him? He doesn't remember that. Something's wrong with him. He doesn't remember that day Alan didn't save Kaylee, Ben said. Scarlet looks at Ben, then back at Rake. Rake doesn't remember either. Scarlet said. Ben tilts his head. Wait, you don't remember either? Ben asked. Rake shook his head no. Dennis got up and brushed the dirt off his clothes. What is wrong with you two? Dennis said as he froze. He looked in front of himself where Scarlet, Rake, and the mini cabin were built. Dennis puts his arms down. You really didn't want us to be in the cold, Dennis said as he walked towards Scarlet. Ben and Herobrine stood still, giving Dennis a moment to examine what's going on. The treehouse front door opened. What is all this yelling about? Balin asked. Balin walked out into the treehouse porch along with Kaylee, rubbing her eyes. What did I tell you about yet? Balin paused herself. She had noticed Dennis and Rake. Oh, I didn't know Dennis and Rake were here. My apologies, Balin said. Scarlet smiles and looks at Balin. It's fine, Mom, Scarlet said. Balin placed her hands on her side. No, it's not fine. I'm going to get you boys drinks. Ben and Brian, do you want drinks as well? Balin asked. Ben and Herobrine looked at Balin. That would be nice, thanks, Ben said. Herobrine smiled. Kaylee, could you stay with Scarlet till I finish? I'll get some hot chocolate while I'm getting them a drink, okay? Balin said to Kaylee. Kaylee smiled and went down the ladder to Scarlet. Balin went inside and closed the door behind her. Dennis gets on his knees, looking at Kaylee. Dennis looks up at Scarlet. Is this the one you were... Dennis said, pausing himself. Kaylee looks at Scarlet. Scarlet nods at Dennis. Dennis and Kaylee look at each other. Kaylee placed a biggest smile on her face and gave Dennis the biggest hug. Thank you for saving me, Kaylee said. Dennis, shocked, slowly hugs her back. The hug lasted for a few moments. Kaylee went and hugged Rake as well. Thank you for finding me, Kaylee said to Rake. Rake smiled and carefully hugged her back. Dennis stood up. So, what you were saying was true, Dennis asked Ben and Herobrine. Dennis looks behind himself, waiting for an answer. It's what we've been trying to tell you this whole time, Ben said. A hug between Kaylee and Rake stopped. Kaylee ran up to Dennis and tugged on his coat. Dennis looks next to him and smiles at Kaylee. He goes to his knees again. Need something? Dennis asked. Kaylee looks at Scarlet and smiles. Kaylee then looks at Dennis. Is it possible you can teach me to make potions too? Kaylee asked with her cute, adorable voice. Dennis smiled. Dennis looked at Scarlet and back at Kaylee. Maybe when you're a bit older, Dennis said as he made Kaylee's hair messy. Balin came back outside. Drinks are ready. Come and get 'em, Balin yelled. Kaylee went up the ladder into the treehouse. Everyone followed. They had sat on the couch. Here came along the kitten Scarlet found in the snow a few days ago, was jumping right into Dennis's lap. Hours later, it was midnight. Kaylee had went to bed along with Balin, Brian, Ben, Scarlet, and Rake. And Dennis. Rake and Dennis were outside. This just doesn't make sense. Do you guys remember anything that day? Or do I have to go through your memories to find out? Scarlet said. Dennis and Rake look at Scarlet shocked. You can see through someone's memories? Rake and Dennis say at the same time. Scarlet places her hand on her face and sighs. Okay, so obviously whatever happened when I left you guys affected your memories in a way. The question is how? Scarlett said, pacing back and forth. Did you guys ever wake up in a place you didn't know before? Scarlett asked as she looked at Dennis and Rake. No, I don't think so. This had been the first time, Rake answered. Scarlett continued to think. We can talk more about it tomorrow. Scarlett said. Scarlett starts heading towards the door of the cabin. Rake gets up and grabs Scarlett's hand. What if we lose our memories again overnight? What if we can't cooperate this time? Scarlett says. Rake says. Scarlett stood still and thinks. Dennis became worried. Scarlett sighs. I mean, we can try to stay up as much as possible, to figure out what causes, but I'm not sure how much longer I can stay awake, Scarlett said. Rake lets go of Scarlett as she returns to her seat. Dennis looked at Scarlett. Did something happen? Dennis asked. Scarlett looked at Dennis and sighed. A little girl named Lazari that lived with Sunday had gone missing. There was lots of blood. I had gone out to look that night to look for her. And I guess you could say I haven't been home for 2 days? Scarlett said. Dennis looked at the ground, then looked at Rake. So you couldn't find her? Dennis asked. Scarlett looked up at Dennis. I wish, Scarlett said. Scarlett turned around and sat back down in the cabin. The first thing we should do is get this recording. If you do wake up and not remember this video will help, Scarlett said. Dennis and Rake agreed to recording the idea. Scarlett grabbed her camera out and placed it on the corner of the shop, leaving it to record. Dennis, Rake, and Scarlett talked in the cabin for hours, trying to find a solution to the problem. Alright, so I guess I somewhat forgot to end this chapter, and that's why it's like 50 pages long. Like, we've read another 10 pages, and yeah, and my head is hurting, so I am going to save where we're at. Oh. So I will have to do some more later. I'm hoping that I was loud enough, because I've noticed in the other videos I wasn't loud enough, and I was like, why? I'm thinking, should I just continue or should I just end it? Alright. I'm just going to end it. I'll try to do another one later on tonight. Talk to you later, guys. See you next time. Bye!